For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, for he's a jolly good fellow. Hello everybody, this here is my grandpa, and my grandpa was a good fellow, as was many other people, because he served in World War II. And there he is in his World War II blazer and beret that he proudly wore every year to celebrate the landings at D-Day. But he was a good fellow, and so was all the other soldiers who served in World War II. What led to this to happen again? What led to another war? Stay tuned. Welcome to Fun with History with Professor Banks. And that was just a little of my dancing display for you. I hope that you liked that. Figured I'd make it a little different today instead of the spinning globe. Okay, so this is Fun with History. And we are on our 24th lesson. And this week the title of our lesson is called 3 Bad Dudes and Totalarism. And it's the beginning of our 3-part series on World War II. Okay, so we're going to dive into this together and hopefully learn a lot together in the next 3 weeks or 5 weeks, because I will be on holidays for some of it, so it's going to spread out a little bit further. Okay, so as I said, I showed you a picture of my grandpa. He was my mom's dad. I was very close to my mom's dad. He was a great fellow, and he was a World War II veteran. He survived the war, and he lived for many years. He was 85 before he passed away. So that was my grandpa that I showed you. And I just want to share this briefly with you quickly. I just wanted to share a little thing I wrote on my grandpa for his eulogy when he passed away. Not all of it, but I want to highlight a couple. Grandpa was truly a hero. He fought many wars in his life, including World War II. I will always remember him as a strong-willed, courageous, brave man. Grandpa, you did everything anybody could ask for in this life. You will always be honored, respected, and loved. Your last moments with us were a symbol of your whole life, being brave and courageous and fighting until the very end. And if anybody's interested, my grandpa actually died from cancer. So it wasn't war that got him, it was cancer. So a war on its own, really. But anyway, that's my grandpa. And I hope you like what I'm sporting today. I'm looking like I'm a World War II pilot here. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm a World War II pilot with my hat and my pilot shirt. So there you go. Having a hot summer, aren't we? Whew, boy, really hot. So I thought I'd share a little bit with you on this summertime. It's funny. A few little things, and then we'll get into our lesson. You know, you are in the summertime when the birds have to use pot holders to pull worms out of the ground. When the trees are whistling for the dogs, or this summer whistling for any kind of water. Hot water now comes out of both taps. You can make sun tea instantly. You learn that a seat buckle makes a pretty good branding iron. What other ones are here? The temperature drops below 95 and you feel a little chilly. And let's see what else. The potatoes cook underground, so all you have to do is pull one out and add butter, salt, and pepper. And here's the last one. The cows are giving evaporated milk. So that's a little bit of our joke for the week. Okay, so let's get into this and let's try to dive through this in a good amount of time. So this is, how did this thing all start? How did we get into another war once again when we already had 4 years of it from 1914 to 1918? How did this happen? Okay, so I got a good diagram here that we're going to run through today, and hopefully you understand it, and hopefully I'll make it as simplified as I can. Okay, so look at those three circles if you could with me, please. Do you see those three circles intertwined together? I'd intertwine them together because they're all factors leading into World War II. So what you got is, first, you got the Treaty of Versailles that was, I talked about last week, being written up, that severely punished Germany. And then 2, you got the Great Depression of 1929. And then 3, you got a strong fear of communism, which is now a part of Russia, as we looked at last week. So these three things are really intertwined together, and these three things are what is contributing to World War II. Let me dive into them a little bit at a time here. The Treaty of Versailles, first of all, okay? The Treaty of Versailles, what it did was it divided countries into haves and have-nots. Okay, and mostly have-nots. It wasn't really, most countries were not in the have position. Most countries were in the have-not position, or poor. And really, everybody got hit by the Depression. But the two countries that really were the strongest in the midst of all that were Britain and France. Okay, but France was starting to get weak because France was on the brink of a civil war. And this was in the late 30s. They were on the brink of a civil war, and they were about to rip each other's throats apart. So that was weakening France. So that was kind of a contributing factor as well. France getting a little weaker because of the internal problems in the country. And then you had a whole bunch of have-nots. And the have-nots, I highlight the three that are the most important. Germany, obviously. Germany was hit hard with the treaty, and they were ticked. Okay, Italy was disappointed that they didn't get more. They weren't ticked, but they were disappointed. And then you got another country down here, Japan. Japan was kind of badly affected by the aftermath of World War I. They were ambitious, Japan, and they were not having access to many resources that they needed. Biggest one is that I wrote down here is minerals. Okay, so you had a Treaty of Versailles that left Germany ticked, Italy disappointed, and Japan very ambitious. Okay, those are the three huge countries that start to become a factor in World War II breaking out. Okay, number 2. Let's go to the number 2 circle here. The Great Depression of 1929. Okay, so I talked about how World War I put the country and the world into a Great Depression in 1929. It was a factor, and you know, it was a pretty bad depression. It was very bad. It affected most European countries. It affected the U.S. It affected North America. It was widespread. So, the Great Depression of 1929 led to 3 strong leaders starting to come to the rise, and they had their own ideas of how to lead things. They had their own idea of how to govern, and they thought, you know what? The people need leaders. The people need answers. So, we have the answers. So, basically, I wrote this: no depression, no Hitler. Obviously, we all know about Hitler. Okay, I don't think I have to talk to you about Hitler being a cause of World War II, because he obviously was. And everybody has probably heard of Hitler, so I'm not going to waste my time introducing him. But basically, no war, no Hitler. No depression, no Hitler. Now, that doesn't mean Adolf Hitler isn't existing, but that means that he probably doesn't get as strong as he did, and probably doesn't have the influence that he did on people. Okay? So, people were searching for answers and leaders. Okay? That's what people are looking for. So, these leaders, Hitler being the biggest one of them, said the right thing for people to listen and respond. Okay? So, that is your second circle there, the Great Depression of 1929. And then your third circle overlapping them as well, and is going to lead to my next arrow, if you understand this, is the strong fear of communism. Now, Joseph Stalin was in charge of Russia at this time, and again, very communist, and he was running that country very much that way. And so, this communism thing was pretty new, and people were kind of afraid of it, okay? So, they feared communism more than they feared these three dudes that we're going to look at in a minute that come onto the scene. So that was how people were looking at things. They were like, communism is bad, okay? That's a scary thing. You know, these three dudes, oh wow, they're rising up, they're leading the people, but no big deal, right? That's we're not too worried about those guys. We're worried about communism more. Okay, so, and then these three dudes come onto the scene, okay? So they're from Japan, Italy, and Germany, okay? So, three different things kind of going on. Let me first get into Italy for you, okay? He's the middle guy there. Do you see three people with a face and eyes and a nose? Right down here. Okay? So I know my board is kind of cluttered, but there's three dudes there. The middle guy there, he looks like he has a bit of a chef's hat on. He's got 1922 on him. His name is Benito Mussolini. Okay, Benito Mussolini. And he is in charge of Italy. And he comes into power in 1922, so only 4 years after the end of World War I. And he is fascist. Okay, he creates a fascist government, which is what Hitler kind of copies to a certain extent too, but he creates a fascist government. Okay, let me tell you about fascism briefly. What is fascism? Okay, three things that characterize it. One, everything is the state. Okay, now everything in the state. So government is supreme. All within the country must conform to the ruling body. Okay, so whoever that is, and at that time it was Mussolini, everybody must conform to him in the country. Okay, so government was supreme, but you had to do what they told you, no matter what. Okay, two, nothing outside the state. So the country must grow. Okay, so, and in order to grow, that means you take territory. And it's kind of like being a dictator, right? You want to rule the world. And that was a second aspect of fascism. Third, and this was very important too, nothing against the state. Okay, so you cannot question or criticize the government at all. Yeah. Can't do it. If you did, you could be sentenced to death, basically. So that was three aspects of fascism, and that was Italy and Benito Mussolini, okay? Now, Benito Mussolini, I had a quote to sum him up, okay? Let me share that with you. Basically, Benito, if you could sum him up, he was saying, let's return to something like the strong Roman Empire that we once were. Okay? Let's return to that. We looked at that very early in history, the Roman Empire. So that was what Mussolini was after. He was like, let's get Italy back into that state again. Okay? So that was Benito Mussolini. Now let's shift our attention to Japan, shall we? Japan, you had a form of government that was called militarism. Okay? So militarism was basically letting the army control the country. Okay, so that was Japan. And this guy came on the scene in 1941. And you can see here what I did for him was I put a gun above his head. Bang. Probably can't see that too well, but a gun, bang. Because that was what they were. They were very militaristic. Okay, so his name was Hideki Tojo, the prime minister from 1941 to 1944, but he was the vice war minister starting in 1938. And he kind of took after another guy, Emperor Hirohito. Okay, he was an emperor that was kind of running the military as well. And he was very strong in being militaristic too. So Hideki Tojo took after him, and he was the leader for most of World War II in Japan. So his motto would be, if he had a quote, he'd probably say, let's use our army, we're going to use our army to own all of the Pacific. Okay, so everything over in that area of the world, China, the islands, even let's look really far down and look at Australia too. So that was his motto. Let us get all of the Pacific. Okay, so that was him. Now, let's talk about the big guy himself. Let's talk about Adolf Hitler, okay? Everybody knows about him. Okay, so he was Nazi. Nazi stand for National Socialist Workers' Party. And he was idolized in Germany. He was really idolized by the citizens because he was very successful at putting a lot of people back to work. Okay? So that was a good thing. People liked that. You know, like, work's good. We have food on the table. We have a roof over our head. We're able to feed our families. This guy is putting us back to work. That is great. So they idolized him. And obviously Hitler was not a very nice man. We all know that. But the biggest thing about Hitler that he would say is he said, we are a gift from God. Germany is a gift from God. We are the one true nation, the only people that matter. And Germany will be mighty again. We are destined to rule the world. Okay, so that was Hitler. Now, a couple of things about Hitler. Hitler hated communism. That wasn't a hidden fact. That was a very much open fact about him. And two things that he believed about the Jews. Obviously, we're going to get into that next week more. Jews, we all know that story. But the big things about them is he believed the Jews were the reason the USA came into the First World War, and that's how come Germany lost when they came into the war. And he also had a strong belief that Jews were a factor in starting communism. So he hated communism. Thus, it makes sense that it breathed down that he hated Jews. Not defending what he did, obviously. It was very, 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 very inhumane what he did. But that is what his rationale was, okay? So, that was Hitler for you. Did I cover all this board? I'm going to give you a few things about Hitler, okay, as well. Let me get into that for you, shall I? This is going to be more like a timeline now that I'm getting into, okay? So, let me just run this over with you. Okay, so, We're going to look at this next week, but Germany, Japan, and Italy actually formed a pact in 1940 to officially be on the same side and join together for fighting, okay? And they made a pact that they would help each other in their campaigns, and that if any country attacked one of them, that country would be in a fight with all of them, okay? So Germany, Japan, Italy, the main powers that were known as the Axis powers. The Allies were a part of World War II as well. The Allies were Britain, France, Canada, Soviet Union. The US came in later, and it was later joined by many other countries as well, okay? So that was that. And we talked about fascism in Italy. Now, if you looked at Germany would have been extreme fascism, okay? Germany was extreme fascism, the way that Hitler ran things. Italy, not extreme, but Italy, definitely fascist. Okay, let me give you a little breakdown here, okay? Quick timeline here. 1929, excuse me, let me backtrack. Yeah, 1921, Hitler became head of the party, the National Socialist Workers' Party. And they short formed that to become Nazi. Okay, so he became head of that party in 1921. So that was only 3 years after the end of World War I. But interesting fact, here's a fun fact for you. Fun fact, okay? First fun fact of our lesson. From November 23 to December 24, so November 1923 to December 20th, 1924, Hitler spent time in jail for treason. Wow. But the jail time served no reason at all and was just merely a time delay in his agenda when it comes down to it. Okay, 1933, Hitler moved up and was appointed Chancellor of Germany by Germany's current president at the time, Hindenburg. And public opinion was a big factor in this decision. People were starting to like Hitler. As I said, the big putting people back to work thing put him in a very good position with the people. So public opinion huge in this decision to appoint him Chancellor. And it's at this time he began massive rearm campaign. So he started to rearm Germany, started to put power into the military, started to get more weapons in his armament, which was basically a direct violation, obviously, of the Treaty of Versailles, because Germany was not supposed to do that. 1 year later, 1934, the President Hindenburg died. In March, before he died, he signed something called an Enabling Act, and it gave Hitler's administration legislative powers. So, after Hindenburg died, what Hitler was able to do was to declare the president's office vacant and made himself head of the state. Just like that. So an important key date there for you. Let me talk about, now we're going back to Italy in 1935. Italy, Mussolini, what he did in 1935 was he invaded Ethiopia. Okay? And he did that because way back in 1896, Italy actually lost to Ethiopia. They were in a battle and they lost. So, 1935, Mussolini took it back over again. Okay, so we see our first real true invasion of these three countries with Ethiopia by Italy. 1936, another violation of Versailles Treaty as Hitler remilitarizes the Rhineland. And the Rhineland is basically the land between France and Germany. Okay, so he remilitarized that, again, a direct violation of the treaty. But the countries didn't really do anything to stop him, because the countries kind of were saying, you know what, yeah, this is a violation, but the Rhineland is really Germany's backyard, so, you know, let them do with it as they will. It's their backyard anyway, and we don't want to get involved, okay? We do not want to get involved. Let's go to Japan, to the Pacific for a second. 1937, Japan invaded China after a clash near Recning, and Japan took control of North China. So we see Japan taking territory there in 1937. February 20th, 1938, Hitler formally announces all support for Japan's agenda and motives. And then in 1938, Hitler did something else. Hitler, in March of 1938, what Hitler did was he marched into Austria. He's greeted by thrones of people as a conquering hero, and he promptly takes over Austria and annexes it into Germany. Okay? And actually, it was even at this time that some of the Jews started to become arrested, beginning the Jew hate campaign. There you go. Hitler's first conquest was Australia in 1938. Okay, and then in May of that year, Mussolini announced his promise to fight democracies alongside Hitler should war break out. So we're seeing support already, even before it's formal, between these three countries of Japan, Germany, and Italy. September 12, 1938, Hitler was poised to invade and conquer the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. Okay, so what that was, Czechoslovakia was a region where that region especially had quite a few Germans living in it. So Hitler was trying to get all the Germans together. Okay, he wanted the Germanies all in one country, one united nation. So he wanted to conquer that region so that he could have the Germans from there. This began the discussions and conference called Munich 1938 in September of that year. Leaders of France and Great Britain met with Germany in Munich to discuss this, and they were trying to appease Hitler. Okay, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to appease him. They were trying to say, listen, let's just try to give Germany a little bit here, and then Germany will be happy, and we'll be happy, and there will be no war. That's what we want. We don't want war. We want peace. So let's appease them a little bit. But obviously, they learned that you can't appease a man like Hitler. And ultimately what came from that Munich agreement was Hitler was given that part of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland region, as nations were afraid of going to war again. And Hitler, on his end, promised to leave the rest of Czechoslovakia alone. Okay? So he made a promise. Hitler made a promise. What has history taught us about Hitler and promises? Do you think he kept it? I don't think he kept it. And obviously he didn't, because what we're going to see in 1939, March 15th, so this was about 6 months after the Munich agreement, Hitler reneged on his promise. And he went in and took over the rest of Czechoslovakia, even though there were no Germans there. The rest of Czechoslovakia were all Slavs, but he took it anyway. All right. So in April of 1939, April 15th, Italy conquered Albania. Okay? So Italy now got Ethiopia, and they conquered Albania and annexed it into Italy. So now Italy has a couple of countries too, just like Hitler has a couple of countries, and just like Japan is after more islands in the Pacific. So we got big leading up to World War II here. And the beginning of the war officially happened September 1st, 1939, and this was the date that Hitler marched in and invaded Poland. An interesting fact about Poland for you, let's just bring this map up again quickly for you. So Poland, poor Poland here, poor Poland. Poland, there's our map again, and there you can see Poland right there. So poor Poland, just sandwiched in between Germany and Russia. And Poland was desired by both countries. Germany wanted Poland, as did Russia. So poor Poland was kind of outnumbered, and they didn't have much of a chance. And it was September 1st, 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland. And actually, the Soviet Union, what happened in that year was Hitler invaded Poland. He invaded one part of it, and then Soviet Union came in and took the other part. So it's split between the two countries. Poland now is completely overrun by enemy territory. And it was only 2 days later after this, September 3rd, 2 days later, where Great Britain and France said, okay, we didn't want to do this, but Germany has left us no choice. They went in, invaded Poland. We have a commitment to Poland. We made a promise to them that we'd help them if they got in trouble, and they did. So Great Britain and France on September 3rd, 1939 declare war on Germany, and then we had the beginning of World War II. Okay, so that was what happened leading up to World War II. So lots of things present to make these leaders come onto the scene, but essentially these leaders came onto the scene. They were very, very powerful. They wanted territory, and they took it, and we have World War II on our hands, okay? Couple of fun facts here for you quickly. We talked about the trenches in World War I. Trenches were very rare in World War II. Very small amount of trenches. They were almost, the trenches that were around in World War II were almost like foxholes. They were designed to hide. They weren't designed as living dwellings, okay? So trenches, not a big part of World War II, very rare, but there were a few around. Okay? And this is a very fun, interesting fact. You know how Germany in the Treaty of Versailles had to pay back all these reparations to their enemies for the damage they caused? Well, Germany was making payments on that until 2010. They actually made their last reparation payment from World War I on October 3rd, 2010. So that is pretty interesting, is it not? But yeah, there's another fun fact for you, okay? So that covers basically all the major stuff. I hope that I brought this across in a format you understood, and in a way that hopefully made sense, okay? I think I covered everything. But this was World War II, folks, and World War II went on longer than World War I. And next week, actually not next week technically because I'm going to be on holidays, but the week after, we're going to look at some of the progress of World War II and some of the key things that happened in the war. Okay, so since my time is running up, I am going to sign off. So this was Professor Banks, or today I am Pilot Banks. And this was the start of World War I, how it all started. So I hope that you liked it. Please subscribe to my videos, or please make comments below. And I hope that you learned a lot from this and had some fun at the same time. This is Pilot Banks, signing off.